and the Portland area was a mess just because of the ice. So not a lot of activities occurred in Salem yesterday. I'd say the other big news of the week, two things. The revenue forecast came out, showed the revenues are up again. The kicker will go up. Lottery revenues are up slightly. So the expected downturn or recession keeps getting pushed off further into the future. And that will give the legislature a few extra bucks to be able to spend or put into the rainy day fund. The other big news I'd point out from a Central Oregon perspective is the semiconductor panel continues to meet, and Redmond has been added to the list of potential sites. That's a project that the city has worked on, I think, pretty closely with the county. It was DSL land that has now been brought into the UGB, still owned by DSL. So the sale of that property proceeds would go to the state school fund. So that's been an interesting process. There was a draft bill unveiled for semiconductor incentives to tap into the Federal CHIPS Act, which is $52.7 billion in potential incentives for states. So if Oregon applies and gets to the front of the line, that could be fairly productive. I think I'll stop there and turn it over to our delegation, let them give us an update, tell us what they're working on. Don't want to take too much of their time this morning. So Rep. Krupp, do you want to start us off this Friday morning?
Sure. Nice seeing everybody. I mean, I guess I would just preface it's still like early in session, right? I don't know, Doug, how many bills are there? 3,000,
3,200 or 3,591 at last count.
Right. And I think there are some sort of universal priorities in the building, housing, homelessness being at the forefront. That is a governor priority, a Republican Democrat priority. You're going to see some early work on that, and some of that was been previewed here in the last week. An initial investments and initial sort of long-term visioning about how do we create enough housing in our state. I think a lot of the other work that you're going to see that Doug just mentioned was the semiconductor package. How do we access federal funds to help grow that industry in Oregon? There had been some concerns about, as they were identifying potential properties throughout the state, that Redmond piece wasn't sort of as known as it should be. I know Doug's done some work on that to elevate that. I had a conversation with the speaker yesterday. That piece of property is a known quantity. That doesn't necessarily ensure anything. It just makes sure it's in the conversation moving forward. So I think those are the sort of big or early things that you're going to see. We got the revenue forecast yesterday. That's starting to have our revenue forecast in ink, but that's still sort of dark pencil or light ink, however you want to look at that. And we're waiting for the May forecast before we start getting sort of final budgetary numbers. So I guess I would characterize that as positive news in the revenue forecast, but we are still trying to be cautious and making sure that we have reserves moving forward. We're actually pretty darn well positioned right now with the amount of reserves that we have, but we want to be taking long-term approach on this. So Doug, I think you did characterize it as potential dollars to make certain investments, but it's also investments for what we need to deal with right now, but also making sure we have money in the bank if those revenue forecasts change in the next few years of biennium. So I think that's big picture. The early piece here in a few weeks when we have some committee deadlines, that 3,500 or whatever the number of bills is going to get dramatically shrunk down, and there'll be a sort of a higher level of focus on what we're working on. What was it, Doug? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that kind of happening right now that is rising to your.
Yeah, Representative, thanks. I think as we talked yesterday, courthouse funding is still important for the county, and that's probably something that's several months off based on the May revenue forecast, but keep an eye on that. I'll just give a quick update on, and we'll get into this in more detail later, but we've been working with Senator Golden on Senate Bill 644 to modify that bill and move it through the process to allow for ADUs in rural areas that previously had been off limits because of the wildfire bill. So that's in process. And then, you know, all the behavioral health workforce issues are pretty key to the county. And I think some of the housing and homelessness that you mentioned is also pretty important. So those are topics that we'll dive into a little bit in more detail later in the call.
Yeah, and I would say that is also behavioral health package, and making sure we have those services is also a top priority identified by, you know, I can speak for House Democrats, but also sort of throughout the building and in the governor's office too. So we are aware of those challenges, and we're also aware of, we've allocated pretty significant amount of dollars in the last biennium, and the challenge of, if you don't have the workforce to effectuate those investments. So I know that Janice has the ear of the healthcare chair, Representative Nost, and Janice has a, well, I think has a pretty incredible and strong reputation throughout the state. And I'd say the same thing about Holly as well. People have taken notice of our stabilization center. Representative Nost has actually toured it. So I think people realize that we are doing good work in Deschutes County.
Representative Commissioner DeBonne here. Thanks for joining us today. Interesting dynamic right now. Homeless citing a possible supported camp situation. City of Bend, the state land use system's done a great job at optimizing the value of land inside the city, which means that it's really tricky to land an acre or two for somewhere to be. And I'm referring to, you know, maybe 10 or 20 camp trailers per acre in a managed camp. Transitional, obviously not a good solution in the long run. So then the idea comes up, oh, well, let's just site it on a few acres outside the city of Bend or Redmond or Sisters or La Pine. And that gets to be a really awkward situation where the city comes to the county and says, if you put a camp outside our city, we'll send our folks to you over there. Sounds like a great path, but we want to work through OEM and maybe the governor's office directly about, would we site on resource land outside of a city, you know, a managed supportive camping situation? Because I don't want to answer that question myself, and people are coming to us asking us for that. And if we want to super site or do it under an emergency order through the governor or something, you know, let's do that. So I'm just pointing out that we kind of need to be lined up from the top down before we would make a move on the ground outside of a city.
No, I can appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it up, Commissioner. You know, in broad strokes, we are having land use conversation in the housing space, right? And where I think we're going to see, how do you have a land use system that balances the values of protecting our open spaces and forest land and farmland, also knowing that we have a housing crisis and we have growing communities throughout the state. So that is a lot of the work that's happening in the housing space about what should that balance look like, and how do we adhere to the traditional values of the land use system, which I think has had a number of positive impacts on our state.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you also have?
Well, when we're bulging out at the seams and we want to fix a problem, and we define rules and regulations that say you can't do this here, because now that, you know, there's a concept that, you know, I'm referring to north of Bend, so Juniper Ridge or just outside of Juniper Ridge, come to find out, you know, CC&Rs at Juniper Ridge, you know, so they're in place. The people that bought a property there says that there shall be none of this other land use in our area. At some point, somebody's got to either change the law or disregard the law, you know, inciting something or not. So that's the big conundrum.
Well, I'm not going to advocate disregarding the law. I don't.
Well, that's my point. People come to us all the time. They're like, hey, just go do this over there. And we're like, well, wait a minute. If that's resource land, that's the most important thing in the state. What's the justification to do that? So that's exactly the conundrum we're in.
I'd like to provide a little bit of an alternate perspective there. One of the difficulties of citing a facility or an outdoor shelter or managed camp within the city of Bend has been neighbor concern. There were actually quite a number of sites considered, and there was neighbor concern, and the city, in my opinion, could have taken a little different path with moving those projects along. And so that is not a land use system issue. That is a local government in relationship to resident constituents dynamic consideration. So, and I would like to say that a little bit of flexibility in our land use system in the near end vicinity of, say, the city of Bend, or even the city of Redmond possibly, could be useful. But to be mindful, this should not be an attack or an insult to the entire land use planning system of the state of Oregon. This is a minor tweak, potentially, where in the near in environment, in the near in vicinity of a city, we would have a little bit of flexibility to do things like safe parking, outdoor shelter, etc. And it could be just like a mile buffer around a large city like Bend.
Well,
So-
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to offer, so if you want some, and we do the, Commissioner Chang and I, there's different ways to say all this, and hopefully there's common ground in the end. But just so you know, when this discussion comes up, think of us, invite us, maybe we can provide testimony and real world examples. And Commissioner Chang and I could sit side by side and explain it too.
I can appreciate that. Thanks.
Great. I know, looks like we have Senator Linthicum on as well. Welcome, Senator. What can you share with us about what's going on in Salem and what your priorities are?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for this meeting this morning. And I have a whole slew of issues with regard to protecting health and safety of life, and school choice, and those kinds of things. I've got a couple of water bills that would also impact Deschutes County, even though it was originally drafted with a view towards Klamath County. And yet, because it's an OWRD water policy issue, it would impact every part of the state, quite frankly. It's a real policy issue. And then if I can just jump in a little bit with regard to the budget and whatever, we didn't, in that discussion, we didn't hear about the kicker, which is just under $4 billion. And that amount of money is quite impressive. $55,200 per working family. That's an average. So there's below and there's high and whatever. But I think one of the more important things, Doug, one of the first things you said was, we see this stream of money and it gives the state a fair bit of leeway. But we really have to remember this isn't necessarily permanent money. You'll all recall that there was, across the US, I don't know the state statistics yet, 200 million to 300 million in additional tax revenue that was earned at the federal level through the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, during the COVID era, and other corporate bailouts. That is a ton of money that came right out of the printing press and landed into people's wallets. They filed business taxes, personal returns, and whatnot. Many doctors, lawyers, small businesses, even larger businesses use that money and are filing returns on it. And so this may look like it was a one-time shot. There's always this enormous lag, and the legislature starts rubbing their hands together and going, we look at this money we can spend. But I think it's a faulty proposition. Governor Kotek's spend right now is right around 32.1 billion in general funds, and she and her Democrat majority has got most of that allocated. And so what we're trying to do is figure out where is the appropriate level of pushback. Where should we slow down? How much should we put in the rainy day fund? And what should we do about those? And my voice is a small voice because I'm not a Ways and Means member. I've got other committees. We see all kinds of stuff coming through Judiciary Committee, which is my main bread and butter committee. But those committees where the Ways and Means, Rep. Reschke, if he's on this call, Rep. Knoop on this call, could talk to, or Senator Knoop could talk to those issues, as well as Rep. Reese Iverson. They all have a hand in playing how that money gets allocated, what projects we'll spend, and where we will hold the reins appropriately. So I just have a kind of a cautionary tale. I'm glad to be here and hear what your needs are, and so fill us in.
Great, thank you, Senator. Yeah, one thought, just hopefully there could be common ground for general support of really shedding light on that Redmond property for the CHIPS efforts that are going on. And I just wanted you to hear that. It's a huge property. It was done for regional economic opportunity purposes. It's an urban growth boundary expansion that was already done for the city of Redmond. Utilities would need to be put up there, but it is a great spot. So when you hear about Redmond and a future technology site, think, oh yeah, that's a good one. The other cities around the Willamette Valley are talking about which farmland are we going to pave over, and it's here right now. So let's all, at least hopefully that'll resonate.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner and Senator, I just jump in, and there was a very interesting study that was produced by Eco Northwest that came out 2 weeks ago that indicated that a major fab like the ones that we're seeing in Oregon, not the 1,000-acre ones in Ohio or Arizona, but the ones that are likely to come to this state, would generate an additional $100 million in property taxes every 2 years, even with the tax incentives that would be provided under gain share, SIP, or the R&D tax credit. So it really does provide tremendous return on the investment when you get that kind of level of workforce and the high paid workers that come in, both for the construction and also for the operation of those plants.
So just a couple more points along those lines. City of Redmond's land use, they've got an urban reserve as well as an urban growth boundary. So when they need to grow, they can take some steps and just move instead of a 5 or 10 year process of where are we going to grow. Also, the complement of City of Bend and Redmond. Redmond is already an industrial employment zone. People, it's a great center of a wagon wheel of Central Oregon, housing opportunities within 20 miles in a lot of directions there. So I'm just pointing out, go ahead and advocate for it as our representatives, anybody listening today. Thank you.
Commissioner, I think we have Reagan from Knoop's office, Senator Knoop's office. Reagan, do you want to share anything with us really quickly?
Not much. The representative and the senator did a good job, but I do thank you for having me. I apologize as I didn't come prepared to appear on video, but I thought it would be helpful to listen in on the situations that you guys are facing there, and appreciate continuing to advocate for Deschutes County. As you know, the Deschutes County Courthouse project has been submitted to Ways and Means that request with the support of the entire Deschutes delegation, which we're very appreciative of. And then we're continuing to work with the representative, Levy and Representative Krupp's offices to submit the requests from our district for various capital construction requests as well. So that's ongoing, but that process for distributing all that money probably won't really get started in earnest until after the co-chairs have their budget framework, which is supposed to occur I think starting next month, and Ways and Means deals with two large expenditures, which is the housing and homelessness package that Representative Krupp was talking about. And then also the semiconductor project that was previously mentioned. Those are going to be pretty big expenditures. And so those will take up a good chunk of time, I think, in terms of early Ways and Means process. Beyond that, I think it's just waiting to see how those large projects go, and then how the budget framework comes out to kind of see what the end game is in terms of what's available for resources that are going to be distributed locally. So I'm happy to take any questions, go find any information if you guys have some burning questions, but don't have much more that I think is particularly relevant for you guys at this moment.
Senator Knopp is also on the call.
Here we go. Welcome, Senator.
Well, thank you. I've been listening in intently. I heard Representative Krupp's presentation, sometimes known as Representative Jason Bourne. We were told that the Capitol didn't open till noon, yet this sleuth spy and representative was able to get into the building unabated. And yet here I am locked down in my apartment. And so good job, Representative Krupp. He was also, I would say, humble, and that he did not bring up his early learning program, which is a key for this session, and has a lot of support, which is great. Nobody's talked about the travel bill yet, the most bipartisan bill of this session. 30 senators, 29 reps. Not allowing people that make like $200,000 a year that live in Texas and Florida to be reimbursed by you, the taxpayer, for their travel back to Oregon to do their jobs on a fully remote policy, which fully remote is less than 8 days in the state of Oregon during a calendar year. I think most everything else has been covered, but I will just reiterate that Redmond did an exceptional job. And the county did an exceptional job in elevating the Redmond property. And of course, our lobbyist, Doug Riggs, he was right there working it, talking to everybody he could to make sure. And so we were able to get Redmond inserted in the language. Just means that really we've been identified as a site. And there's obviously hope that there'll be someone that'll move forward with an application. And, you know, we know that there are people talking about that as it relates to Redmond that would bring in some investment dollars, hopefully for infrastructure for the property to develop that, because that is one of the easiest sites to get to develop and to move through the process quickly. So with that, happy to answer any questions. It's good to see Senator Linthicum. Hey, we missed him the last couple of days. Heard he was back in Klamath area, but we're looking forward to a normal week next week. We were playing that song, "It Is the End of the World as We Know It," and we feel fine as Portlanders left their cars on the highways and just abandoned them. So it took people hours and hours. There was a group of Eastern Oregon students who came yesterday. They left La Grande at noon on Wednesday and got to Portland by 4 p.m. Did not get to Salem until 4 a.m. the next morning. It took them 12 hours to go from Portland to Salem. So I spent a lot of extra time with them. I think they got to meet Representative Krupp as well, because we were both there for, well, I was there for the non-Senate floor session and for the sort of House floor session. And I will tell you, Representative Krupp wore these neon orange shoes on the House floor. So he was definitely repping OSU Cascades. So good job, Rep.
Great, thank you very much. So for that site in Redmond, I would propose that we do a reception out there, possibly. You know, if anybody has ideas about Edco and Ready and the existing businesses, the city of Redmond, Deschutes County proper, we could put out just a little afternoon, Friday noon reception out there after a legislative week or something here in the next couple of weeks, if it would be valuable. And I'd love to host, Representative Bynum and whoever might want to come up.
Hey Doug, I have an 8:30. I need to hop off.
Yeah,
Great,
I think
great.
we set aside a half an hour for our legislators, and thank you very much for being here. And you'll see my bright smiling face again on Monday morning, but thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you guys all soon.
All right, thanks.
And
Go
I
ahead.
think that's a great idea for a tour of the site. I will chat with Chair Bynum and Chair Solman and see if there's any time for them to come over at some point. It's pretty fast and furious right now, but it might slow down in a month or so.
Yep, just any opportunity, because I'm just sure there'd be all kinds of local folks like, oh, here we go, let's look at this, because it'd be good for local focal point on that too, because economic development people understand it, land use people in the city of Redmond understand it, but Central Oregon might be doesn't remember, because 10 years ago was the effort to get that into the UGB, large lot, industrial, shovel ready. Obviously, utilities are the next step, but yeah, it's kind of a big deal. So, okay. Whitney, what's the next step?
I think we have just a few housekeeping items. We should be light on this week. Commissioner DeBonne, I want to turn it back over to you. I believe you had 2 requests you wanted to discuss,
Yeah.
one related to Core 3 and one related to House Bill 2345 and some work that COIC has going on. So I'll turn it back to you for those 2 items.
Yeah, so the 2345 was a previous session's bill number. So thank you very much for reminding me and mentioning that specifically. So what it is rural capacity development. This is work that Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council does. Scott Aycock brought it up, and I got the email. I think I forwarded it to Whitney. But the concept is there was in a proposed policy option package for like the Business Oregon. I guess I got to stop talking. I don't know the specifics here, but it's an ask for dollars like this bill that was put in 2 years ago. So I just wanted everybody to hear about it. It's not a hot topic for today. Doug, I'll forward you the email so you understand what it is, or you might know already because COIC was asking about this.
Yeah, I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the part of the Central Oregon Wildfire Workforce Partnership, the Heart of Oregon Corps, Central Oregon COIC. Is that the?
I think it was more of another program, which was just rural development, the one that the Ford Family Foundation matched after the legislature did it 2 years ago.
Okay.
So there's an email.
Okay, sounds good.
So basically, yeah, so today I'm not ready for it, but it was a topic that came up yesterday afternoon. I just sent it out so people hear about it. And basically it's asking for this rural development dollars. And it's basically from Deschutes County's point of view, it's Lapine and Northern Klamath, but it's also Crook and Jefferson efforts that go on, and Jefferson County's more things. So it's a Central Oregon thing. And I'm bringing that up because I'm the chair of the COIC board right now. So next week I'll get more information on that. As I say, it's not a bill, it's more of a policy option package from one of the departments. And then Core 3 is just a request to add our logo to a letter to the legislature. And for Deschutes County, it's that situation where it's an ask for capital. So I just wanted my fellow commissioners to understand that, we're asking for capital for a courthouse. And this is the official ask, would we support putting our logo on a Core 3? So we're already in with a land donation, but do we support putting a logo on a Core 3 letter of ask for capital? So I'm asking my fellow commissioners at this time for authority to do that. Commissioners?
I really want the courthouse money. And we've already put the land in, and that money for the Corps needs to come from someone else. So, at this moment, I would, and I know the courthouse funding won't be till the end, but I would hate to ask for a ton of money for Core 3. What are they asking for, Tony?
I think it's 5.5 million, but I'm sorry, I don't have the paperwork in front of me right now. Is that correct?
5.5. Yep.
Good, 5.5 million. So, and you know, we're not, this isn't a high pressure ask because we're already a player. We're already donated land. I'm at the table on that one also. So if we don't add our logo, you know, there, it'll show the support around this in the Tri-County area. So Commissioner Chang, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have thoughts similar to Commissioner Dare. I do not support putting in something that's going to compete with our courthouse ask.
Well, that's fine. So as I say, we're already involved with the project. We're just not going to put our logo on the letter that says, please give us $5.5 million because we already have a higher priority ask. So yeah, I'm glad I brought it up here today. Let's leave it at that because as I say, we are already a player. We're in Central Oregon's efforts. I'll go back to the Core 3 team and let them know for this letter specifically, we're just going to stand by knowing we're already a big player. And now Doug's heard that discussion too. Thank you so much. Okay.
I think the next item that was on my radar, Commissioner Chang, I believe you had flagged Senate Bill 644 and the potential of wanting to discuss that bill today. And I think Doug was able to send you an email update this morning. Is that something you'd like to discuss this morning?
I would like to discuss that some more. I appreciate the draft amendment that Doug sent over, but well, if I spent a bunch of time with it, I'm sure I could actually digest and understand it a little better, but I only had a chance to quickly look at it. So I would love an explanation because, you know, the way that those amendments are written, they are not so easy to read and understand. And this is, to me, very important that we as a Board of Commissioners understand what Senate Bill 644, the ultimate Senate Bill 644 is going to do, and the approach that it takes to wildfire hardening and defensible space in these areas that we are pretty sure are going to be at higher extreme risk eventually rated, and that we speak about that appropriately. Because you know, if we are putting out the message that we have, you know, we're going to get SB 762 gutted, I do not support that.
Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate those comments. I'm going to turn it over to Peter. I will just describe the amendment very quickly, and then Peter might have a couple extra comments. But Legislative Council did draft something, got it back to Senator Knopp last week, and we took a look at it this week. The goal of the amendment is to allow counties to move forward with authorizing ADUs as long as they comply with existing ORS hardening standards. And so that's what the amendment attempts to do. Peter, I know, had some issues and wants to clarify the defensible space standards with the fire marshal. So we've reached out this week to the fire marshal. Hope to get a meeting with him early next week on that issue. But Peter, is there anything else you want to add on this?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was an excellent summary of the -1 amendment to Senate Bill 644 in coordination with Lane County, and then internally evaluating the bill. It appears that the ambiguity associated with defensible space could be problematic in the event that Deschutes County, if this bill was adopted and Deschutes County tried to amend its codes to comply with it, someone, I think, could challenge our ability to adopt amendments when there's no demonstration about how defensible space will be addressed. So here's just what I've done this week. Keith Moriarty, our county forester, is out until Monday. I did reach out to Joe Stutler, and what we've communicated back to Doug and others as an approach to provide some parameters around defensible space is to cite minimum standards in the International Fire Code, sections 603, 604. My sense is that will likely align with the state fire marshal, who I presume, you know, has an understanding of what their defensible space standards should be. It's just that they're kind of waiting in line for the Department of Forestry's wildfire map to get resolved. So there's context now for how one might define defensible space through Senate Bill 644. So I know there was an urgency to get comments in by Wednesday of this week, which we did with this requisite suggestion. And thanks to Joe Stutler, our former county forester, who's a management analyst for us, to kind of coordinate and offer this kind of friendly amendment. So that's what I would share with the group as it stands today.
Yeah, so we'll be following up the fire marshal, working with Peter. If we need to make a change to the -1 and draft a -2, I think we can have LC do that fairly quickly. From an overall standpoint, I probably had I'd say 15 conversations this week with everyone from Lane County to the Oregon Association of Realtors to Senator Knope's office, which has been working with us on a daily basis, trying to get the language right. I know both Senator Knope and Senator Finley have talked repeatedly with Senator Golden, and Senator Golden has made a commitment to move the bill as amended once we get the language correct, and hopefully move it quickly. I'd love to get the bill moving so we don't get trapped in the end of session hullabaloo. So we'll try to get that moving as quickly as possible. But first, we need to make sure that the language in the amendment is rock solid, does what we need it to do, and hopefully we can do that by next week. So, Commissioner, I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you, Doug. And Peter, I guess I would say about the defensible space, that is, that is a piece of the SB 762 requirements that will catch up with properties eventually. Like it's not a, the hardening, the building hardening, that's, basically you do it at construction or it doesn't get done. While the other, if I understand correctly, the defensible space requirement is something that will come when when defensible space requirements are instituted across the county in high and extreme risk areas. So I maybe I wouldn't worry about getting that all lined up at the point of construction and applications for ADUs.
Yeah, well said, Commissioner. There's just an acknowledgement that there could be a vulnerability in the event that the county had an objector who wanted to challenge the amendments, in the fact that there are no defensible space standards identified in the code, or I think it's cross-referenced in Senate Bill 391. It speaks generally to the state fire marshal's provisions. I think the intention was if Senate Bill 762 was a perfect bill, we wouldn't be in this situation and everyone would know what those standards are. So you may be right at the end of the day, but Lane County, who's also really committed to seeing Senate Bill 644 going through successfully. Amongst staff, we're just acknowledging that there may be an Achilles heel in the event that there was an objector and there weren't provisions describing what defensible space represents. But we'll have to wait and see in the event that there is no clarification. But it was important for us to alert everyone to this, like I said, this vulnerability.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, and then turning to the bill report, Commissioner DeBonne, I think there's only one bill on this week's report that's still in draft status, and that's on page 7 under Fair and Expo. I think Jeff is still on with us. Jeff, would you like to give the board a quick overview of what you're proposing related to House Bill 3214?
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. And Whitney, on House Bill 3214, I probably need to amend the status request on that based on some information this week. HB 3214 is a bill similar to HB 3008 from 2021 that didn't go anywhere, that prohibits the utilization of animals for a variety of different activities. As of now, that bill is not scheduled for a hearing or work session is the update that I got. So it could probably be moved to maybe a position 3 or 4 at this time. And I apologize, I got that update late this week, so didn't get that changed for this session, this morning.
So it's something that we'd really care about it possibly if it's moving, but if it's not moving, we just need to put it on the side anyway. So do we have a mechanism for that, Whitney or Doug?
Yep, we can just adjust the way we're tracking it and then readjust if needed later on.
Okay. So I would, yeah, so the original position now, because we haven't done anything with this yet, you're saying. Let's confirm that we'll put it in a 3 monitor state, knowing that it could be interesting. And if the other commissioners support that.
Yeah, that's correct. I asked the committee staff, and they said at this point, they have not gotten an indication from the chair that they intend to move the bill. So it appears to be kind of on hold at this point, but if it's on the list as a 3, then staff will keep an eye on it. And if it gets scheduled, we can bring it back.
Great. Thank you.
Sounds like a good plan. 4-3.
Thank you.
Agree, fine.
Okay, now we're on the same page.
I think those are all of the housekeeping items that I'm aware of, but I'll turn it over to departments and also to you, Doug, if there's anything else that might need the board's attention this morning.
So yeah, let's acknowledge a lot of folks from Deschutes County are here. Any department head comments, I guess just, yeah, proceed and we'll see if there's more than one people speaking at the same time, one person. Okay, anybody? Oh, go ahead.
I'll just jump in. I just, the one bill that I had mentioned to Doug yesterday, and I think it's Representative Kropp already mentioned it, but it's the new House Bill 2001, likely moving forward at lightning speed. It sounds like with as I heard yesterday, the -8 amendments, and this would provide the significant resources to address housing, houselessness, homelessness in the county, among a lot of other things. So just so that it's on our radar. And I saw Cheyenne on here earlier. Yes, she's at the bottom of my screen.
So this is the funding portion of the big discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Yep.
So just so it's on our radar, it sounds like that's moving quickly.
Yeah, Nick, I'll just give a quick update. I've been sitting in on the House Housing Committee hearings on the bill. This is a catch-all bill. It was meant to respond to the governor's plea for $130 million for homeless response. The bill, there are 2 bills. One is a funding bill, and then one of the 5,000 bills, 50, 55 or something like that. And the other is 2001 is the policy bill. I sent around a summary of the bill to Whitney and Nick and Jen, and they can forward that out to the staff or the commissioners. But it's a kind of a catch-all bill. It includes $25 million in new funding for homeless youth programs. So we know that in Deschutes County, homeless youth programs have been really underfunded. JBAR-J has really been struggling to keep workforce and expand programs, so that'll certainly be helpful in Deschutes County. It includes funding on new standards for housing needs analysis by cities in particular. They have to put together plans for responding to the need for housing and a few other provisions as well. So won't go into great detail, but that's one of these packages that I've mentioned the last couple of weeks is keen on passing. As long as I have the floor, I'll say that another package to keep an eye on will be a ballot measure 110 package. I've been at the table. They've been having weekly meetings chaired by Representative Rob Noss, who's the chair of the House Housing and House Healthcare and Behavioral Health Committee, and he has put together kind of an initial list of recommendations that aren't final yet. So I'll send those over once they become final. But tackling everything from membership on the state commission, the selection committee, to funding for the burns, et cetera, et cetera. So it's fairly detailed on that front. And then along the same lines on behavioral health and behavioral health workforce, some of the behavioral health bills are starting to be scheduled for work sessions. So you'll see some of those move. There was a bill to provide funding for Portland State University's social work activities that was on the calendar for a work session coming up. So we'll keep an eye on that. And I see Janice has her hand up and probably has some comments.
Sorry, not necessarily about that particular bill. I just wanted to flag a couple things. One is a legislative concept, 4359, which relates to funding CBOs for local public health authorities. And it's an attempt to put some parameters around how those CBO dollars are distributed in communities and ensure that they're distributed, community-based organization is CBO, that those funds are distributed to entities that already are established in counties and also distributed in coordination with local public health authorities. So I know David Doyle and county councils are keeping an eye on it, but it's just something to have on the radar because Tom Kuhn could potentially be asked to testify and might have to circulate testimony quickly if it comes up for a hearing, if it turns into a bill and comes up for a hearing. The other bill, I forget the number, I'll send it to Whitney. It is the one related to admin burden. It came out of the Behavioral Health Transformation Work Group. If that bill gets a hearing and that is still up for discussion, Rep. Nose is taking a look at it, then I might be asked to testify because I co-chaired that work group and I would be circulating that testimony probably outside of this Friday meeting because of the timing. So just a heads up to commissioners and county admin staff that could happen. That's it.
Chad.
I guess
Thank
I'll go ahead. There's a bill, House Bill 3229, which establishes an annual fee increase for air quality permits. It impacts us here, not landfill, and it does establish a cap of either the annual cost increase for administering the federal air quality program, or a 3% cap, whichever is less. So it's nice to see that there is a limit on the bill here, and I just flag that for watching as it moves forward.
Chad, can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
I was alerted to this bill by a fellow lobbyist who had just taken a look at it, and her concern was that the permit fee would be increased by 80% in year one. Are you saying that those caps that are in the bill would are reasonable enough so we wouldn't see an 80% increase in our Title V permits?
Well, I looked at that this morning and I did not catch that. I will take a closer look at that. It came up on my emails this morning and I was scrambling on a couple other things, so I gave it a quick look here. I'll review it again in more detail.
Yeah, that'd be great. They just scheduled yesterday on a snow day. They scheduled a hearing for Monday morning, or Monday afternoon. So any comments or input you can get back to us, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, I'll get on it today for sure.
Okay, Doug, any other updates from you?
Well, I'm sure as soon as we get off the call, I'll think about 25 things that I wanted to share with you. I did have a question for Chris Doty on the ODOT fund exchange. I keep pressing the Joint Committee on Transportation about their plans, and I keep getting no detailed response back from them. So I just want to let you know that we're still asking about that. I know you and Commissioner Chang both testified on that issue several weeks ago. The Joint Committee has not begun holding work sessions on any bills. They're still in the kind of informational hearing stage, so I'm not too worried about it. And that's a committee that goes all the way through the end of the session and can pass bills up until the end of the session as they're joint. But just thought I'd check in and see if you've heard anything from your contacts on that ODOT fund exchange bill.
Yeah, so AOC and ODOT are working on an amendment. ODOT is, I understand, working with us in earnest for the first time. So I think that's the next step, is showing up hand in hand back in front of the committee with something that ODOT can agree to. And we're hopeful.
Great. Yeah, keep us posted.
Yep, we'll do.
Looks like Tom Kuhn has an update.
Not really an update, but just a heads up that one bill which the commissioners support, which is House Bill 3090, that prohibits the selling and distribution of flavored inhalant delivery systems or flavored tobacco products. This may come up for a meeting sometime soon. Nothing's been scheduled, but we may possibly submit testimony or oral testimony for that if that happens. So just a heads up, that may be coming in the next week or so.
Thank you.
Great, go ahead, Whitney.
I think that that's all that I'm aware of, Commissioner DeBonne. I'll turn it back over to you if there's anything else.
Okay, well, this has been a good hour this morning, a lot of good topics. It's going to get more exciting as weeks go on, obviously. Thanks, everybody, for being up to speed on the topics in your domain. And Doug, it's great working with you. Thank you. And as I say, I'm sure it's going to get more and more exciting as the months go on right now. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.